Do you guys remember when I was talking about the Phantom Menace about 15 videos ago? I said that the Phantom Menace was not the worst one. It's this one. Welcome to the final review of the Star Wars Retrospective. Tomorrow we'll be ranking all the films, so stick around for that. Let's get into this one, the worst one in the series. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, the final installment in the sequel trilogy, has been widely regarded as the worst film in the Star Wars franchise. It has mixed reviews from both critics and fans, with many criticizing its rushed plot, lack of character development, and inconsistent storytelling. In this video, I'm going to explore why The Rise of Skywalker is an awful film overall and why it's the worst one in the Star Wars franchise. One of the main reasons why Rise of Skywalker is a bad film is its rushed and convoluted plot. The plot tries to cram too many storylines and plot twists, leaving little room for character development or emotional resonance. The pacing is frenetic, with the film jumping from one action sequence to another, without giving the audience time to process what's even happening on screen. The result is a disjointed and confusing narrative that fails to engage the audience. Another major flaw of The Rise of Skywalker is its lack of character development. The film introduces new characters like Zori Bliss and Jannah, but they are given so little to do and are quickly forgotten. The main characters, Rey, Finn, and Poe, are so poorly served by the script. Rey's character arcs, which was one of the strengths of the previous film, is rushed and unsatisfying. Finn's storyline is also underdeveloped, and his character is reduced to a one-dimensional sidekick. Poe's character is given a little bit more to do, but his arc feels contrived and forced. Also, Poe and Finn are like the same fucking person. The Rise of Skywalker also suffers from inconsistent storytelling. The film contradicts and retcons the major plot points from the previous film, such as Rey's parentage and the nature of the Force. This inconsistency undermines the coherence of the overall narrative and feels like a betrayal of the previous films. The film also relies heavily on nostalgia and fan service, without characters and plot points from the original trilogy being shoehorned into the story without any real justification. Furthermore, the film's action sequences are poorly choreographed and lack tension. The space battles and lightsaber fights are generic and lack the creativity and excitement of previous films. The film also relies too heavily on CGI, and the visuals often feel artificial and unconvincing. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is an awful film overall and is the worst film in the Star Wars franchise. It's a rushed plot, lack of character development, inconsistent storytelling, and mediocre action sequences make it a disappointing and unsatisfying conclusion to the sequel trilogy. The film's reliance on nostalgia and fan service also fails to capture the spirit of the original film. While it may have its defenders, The Rise of Skywalker will always be remembered as a disappointing end to this beloved franchise. And I think we can just keep going with this, because I hate it so much. One major problem with the film is its handling of the character of Kylo Ren. Kylo was set up as a complete and conflicted villain in the previous films, but in The Rise of Skywalker, he is reduced to a one-dimensional antagonist who is easily swayed to the light side. His arc feels rushed and unsatisfying, and his redemption lacks the emotional impact it should have had. Another issue with the film is its treatment of the character Rose Tico. Rose was introduced in The Last Jedi as a kind of good supporting character, but in The Rise of Skywalker she's relegated to a minor supporting role with little to do. This is particularly frustrating given the harassment that actress Kelly Marie Tran faced after the previous film's release, and it feels like a missed opportunity to give her a character and a more prominent and meaningful role. The film's reliance on nostalgia and fan service is also a significant problem. While it can be fun to see familiar characters and locations from the original trilogy, The Rise of Skywalker takes this to an extreme, with the story feeling more like a checklist of references and callbacks than a more cohesive narrative. This approach can feel pandering and disrespectful to the previous films, rather than a genuine attempt to build onto their legacy. Finally, the film's ending is unsatisfying and lacks closure. While the final battle against Palpatine is, from a CGI standpoint, somewhat impressive, the resolution feels rushed and contrived. The film ends with a montage of characters celebrating, but it feels really unearned given the lack of emotional investment and the characters and their arcs. Overall, The Rise of Skywalker is a disappointing and underwhelming conclusion to the Star Wars saga. Its rushed plot, lack of character development, inconsistent storytelling, and reliance on nostalgia and fan service make it a pale imitation of the other films. While it may have its defenders, it is unlikely to be remembered as anything other than a missed opportunity to do justice to a beloved franchise. I also wanted to just mention some advice for how the movie could have been better. Before we continue, I don't claim that I'm a professional and Cosmonaut has a better video doing just this, but here we go. One of the most significant changes that could have been made to improve the film was giving the story more breathing room. This plot is convoluted and rushed, with too many storylines and plot twists crammed into a single film. By splitting the story into 2 films, or just cutting down on the meat of the story in the first place, they could have more time to develop the characters, flesh out the plot, and allow for more emotional resonance. The approach would have allowed the audiences to become more invested in the story and the characters, creating a more satisfying conclusion to the saga. Another way to improve the film would be to focus more on character development. The previous films in the sequel trilogy did an excellent job of introducing complex and compelling characters such as Rayfin and Poe. Still, in The Rise of Skywalker, their arcs feel rushed and underdeveloped. By spending more time in exploring their motivations, fears, and desires, the filmmakers could have created a more emotionally resonant story that would have kept the audience engaged. Another issue with the film is the inconsistent storytelling. The Rise of Skywalker contradicts and retcons significant plot points from previous films, undermining the coherence of the overall narrative. To avoid this problem, the filmmakers could have planned the story more carefully, ensuring that each film built on the previous one and that plot points were consistent and logically sound. This approach would have created a more satisfying and cohesive trilogy that would have done justice to the Star Wars legacy. The film's action sequences could have also been improved to make the film better. While the space and lightsaber battles were visually impressive, they lacked the creativity and excitement of the other films. To make the sequences more engaging, the filmmakers could have focused on creating more visually stunning set pieces that would have kept the audiences on the edge of their seat. Finally, the film's ending could have been improved to provide a more satisfying conclusion to the franchise. While the final battle against Palpatine was visually impressive, the resolution felt rushed and contrived. By spending more time building up to the final battle and giving the characters more agency in the story's resolution, the filmmakers could have created a more emotionally resonant and satisfying ending. So in conclusion, there are many things that could have been done differently to make The Rise of Skywalker a better film. By giving the story more breathing room, focusing more on character development, ensuring consistency in storytelling, and improving the action sequences, and providing a more satisfying ending, the filmmakers could have created a more cohesive and emotionally resonant conclusion to the Star Wars saga. While the film may have its defenders, it's clear that there was room for improvement, and the missed opportunities of Rise of Skywalker will always be a source of disappointment for fans of the franchise. Well, I guess that's it. I'm gonna have to give this film an outstanding 1 out of 10. I hate it so much. In the end, I love this series, and there's one more thing that we'll do tomorrow, which is rank the films. 16 movies and TV shows in, I finally realized that I need to get a life. See you tomorrow.